What's up, everybody? Thralls Metal here once again. I'm Necrotic.
I'm Jammin John.
And we have yet another album review for you, and one that I've been anticipating just because I've been recently getting into this band, and they really are something else. So we're going to go over the latest offering from Dipygus with their album Dipygus. This also comes out on the 26th of January on Memento Mori Records. This band formed in 2013 in California. This is their third full-length. I got into them with their second album, Bushmeat, and then recently we actually got a package that included their most recent EP, Wet Market. Still clueless as to what a wet market is. I don't care. There's a lot of things that really confuse me about this band anyway. As far as describing this band's sound, it's definitely death metal, but it's also a lot of other really strange things.
I actually have never heard this band. I've heard of this band, but I've never heard this band. So today's listening was today's listening. It's definitely death metal, but I don't know.
Yeah.
I really don't know.
No, this band's very strange. Like, lots of sludgy riffs. It's very weird just in terms of the atmosphere. The themes are strange anyway. Like, we go from stuff that are like real life horrors to just kind of like gross tropes in death metal to very specifically cryptids. Like, they really love cryptids. Like, they've talked about Mothman, they've talked about Bigfoot, they've talked about ones that I had no clue existed. Well, I mean, they probably don't, but at least to this band they kind of do.
So, based on all that, starts off with the song Perverse Termination, Bulb of Force. Off the bat, it sounds like it's gonna be normal-ish. Comes in with big droning synths and spoken words, and then one of the biggest, nastiest, grimiest, down-tuned, stank-faced riffs. And at this point, very early on, I was like, okay, here we go. But then none of that.
Yeah, this band is known for its wild transitions, and even in comparison to their earlier stuff, like Death Ooze, their debut, which I recently just got, and you'll see in a collection update, it's even stranger on this one. The atmosphere is one layer of strange, though, and it's a big part of it. You frequently have, like, synths come in, and whenever they show up, things immediately get weirder. But the samples and the atmosphere itself, like, that little sample in there is someone talking, and kind of behind that is this, like, electric crackle.
Kind of?
Yeah, like a fuse that's just kind of about to blow or something like that, and then you're, again, just greeted to these grimy, dirty riffs. And this was mixed by Greg Wilkinson, and you bet your ass the bass is prominent as hell.
It is the nastiest, most snarling force, like, entity. Like, it's huge, and it just sounds meaner and nastier than anything you've ever heard.
Yeah, the range of this bass, I mean, how it melds in with the very down-tuned, disgusting guitars, like, it's just massive sounding. And between this opening track and the song Monrovia, Liberia, 1990, those are probably the two most straightforward tracks on here. Monrovia is pretty much a kind of balls-to-the-wall, very autopsy-esque banger. Lots of D beats, intermittent blast beats in between there. It's a very high-energy, stomping song, like just massive grooves, big chuggy riffs. And while it has its strange accents, they all kind of come together really well as like kind of a more straightforward death metal song. But the rest of this just kind of goes off the rails, but in a lot of really cool, interesting ways. Kind of playing off that weird atmosphere. The songs are strange, like the riffs constantly twist and churn and kind of slither through songs. Like, I'm reasonably sure every song in here would leave like a snail trail. It's just gross and weird. Songs like Aqua Genesis and The Dover Demon, which apparently is another cryptid I'd never heard about. It looks kind of like Paul from Paul, you know, the movie with the alien, except, you know, spooky.
Sure.
But these songs are just nuts. The transitions on here are very frequent. You have these really interesting fluid drums. They're huge in the production, but like the tempo shifts are just nuts. And then you have these almost like kind of like anti-melodies, like frequently strange harmonies.
That, and then when you have the keys compounded with that, like, the keys always seem to go, like, against the flow. Like, regardless of what the guitars are doing in this weird, harmony thing that they do, like, the keys are going against the current. And contrasting melodies, it's wild.
Yeah, especially, like, the Dover Demon. There are some sections on there that are just, well, they feel kind of haphazard. And there's a lot of, like, interesting, like, punk off-time drumming on there, like, kind of like stuff you would hear in like Dead Kennedys and such, but being played by Autopsy. Because if I was going to center in on one band in particular, at least on their death metal side, Autopsy feels like the right one, and it's not just because of Greg Wilkinson. It's because Autopsy.
Yeah, full of punky two-step grooves. That's how I would describe a majority of the drum work on here. There are some D beats, there are some blast beats, but for the most part, it sits in a two-step groove.
Yeah, but this one plays a little bit more on like a off-time sort of groove. But when you get down to this really strange blast beat section that just kind of pops up, and that's a lot of the transitions, they just kind of come at you. There is a synth pattern behind there that is just flat out strange.
And it's really off in the distance. One of the cool things about this record is that you're never really sure what you're hearing at any given time. And like that melody sits so far back in the distance that there were just multiple times where we were like, wait a minute, do you hear that? Like, and that melody is so strange.
Yeah, that melody in particular, I wasn't sure if it was the sound of like a rickety ice cream truck going by, but it is January, so that's not happening. Or someone was playing Simon in the studio and the batteries were dying.
Word. That's actually pretty spot on.
And the transitions, again, are wild and can be very dynamic, especially like almost shifting from style. Like you can go from like blast beats or like a punky two-step to just crawling, disgusting death doom. Ross Sea Trawler, which the actual title of that song is in Cyrillic, and I'm not good at that.
I'm not educated enough for that.
No.
I'm hardly educated enough to do this review, let alone write in Cyrillic.
That language looks like every key on a scientific calculator that you don't use. But yeah, that song starts off punky, furious, like very fast right out of the gate. And of course, crazier than hell. But then you have these giant death doom sections. And honestly, this is where like some of the melody really shows up, because there's some great lead melodies on top of these just absolutely disgusting droning riffs. And another thing on here that I think is really impressive and contributes to the strangeness, because that is exactly what this band is about, are the leads. The leads are, well, they're kind of like randomly placed in songs. Like I don't feel like you get like that moment where it's like building into the bridge and you kind of know the lead's coming. It's just there. And it's kind of whatever the hell it wants to be.
I mean, all these songs are kind of whatever the hell they want to be. But yeah, the leads are not placed in typical places. Like in any given song at any given time, a lead could pop up and you just be like, okay.
But it's a variety in the leads too. Like sometimes you get like just a mess of squealy dive bombs. Sometimes you get like an almost kind of jazzy solo. Sometimes you get like traditional metal shredding. And again, sometimes how the transition out of the leads can be interesting. Like there's a couple of moments on here where they're getting out of a lead section into the next big heavy riff where it kind of sounds like a carousel breaking down or like a rickety fair ride that's just like, well, it's starting to short up.
Rat lungworm.
Yeah, that might be it.
Yep,
that might be it. Which was like a really interesting setup instrumental. And yeah, if there's a moment on here that they can squeeze in some strange atmosphere, they do it. And honestly, that makes this listen so much more immersive. Whether it is just the actual atmosphere with these synths and samples and such, or just like weird vocal things like Ross Sea Trawler. There's a moment there where the vocals shift and they kind of sound like it's like someone barfing into a bucket. Like legit, like it's just like they're just in there and it's bad. It's a chunky one and it hurts, but the overall effect is awesome. And it's interesting to pick out because like generally when you think of like really sludgy, dingy death metal, sometimes you kind of lose a lot of that in production. And I think once again, like Greg Wilkinson is just the guy to mix this, because there is not an ounce of grime and filth that is lost on here, but everything is separated really well to the point where you can make out like every individual instrument really well.
Yeah, it's weird. Normally in crazy, chaotic music, because, I mean, there's a ton of it out there. Normally, there are times when you can lose what's happening because it's just like a shit fit of noise, and you're like, I don't know what's going on. But the way that this is mixed and presented, it allows you to hear and digest all of it, which is another mind fuck.
Yeah, like rhythmically, it's not super complex. Like there's not a lot of like polyrhythms or anything like that, or just like, you know, strange blast patterns or anything like that. It's very kind of on the nose. It just happens very quickly. It kind of moves around like a feral child that's been like let loose in a toy store. Like it's like, ooh, look at this thing, look at this thing. But with that atmosphere sort of like compounding the strangeness, it's kind of like navigating a fog. And the fog definitely has like creatures that want to harm you in it.
And you know that ahead of time, but you go in there anyway.
You know, kind of like the fog. And there are some like shorter tracks that kind of serve as like interludes or like segues into the next track. But honestly, like, you know, generally I have an issue with those, but they actually contribute in here, like bug sounds too. Megascelitis australis, which I had to look up because I was curious, and turns out it's a giant earthworm.
Like 3 foot long earthworm. It's gross.
It's super gross. And the samples are appropriately slimy and just you can hear it kind of undulating in its own mucuses.
Yeah.
And then there's a saw, and you can kind of hear what might be like it's flailing around, and the worm guts are just, yeah, no, it's gross.
I'm glad I didn't eat before this album.
And then we get into strange electronic music. Like all of a sudden it gets this weird kind of horror synth thing with the drum machine, and it's pure cult cinema.
Yeah.
But also, like, it feels like the intro to, like, a Super Nintendo game or a PlayStation game that I never got a chance to play, that probably didn't make it across the pond. And Rat Lungworm, which lungworm is hyphenated, so it's specifically about worm, I think. I don't know what they're talking about there. It's gross. But that one is, like, kind of just a short setup track for the massive, almost closer Sacral Brain, which is like almost 12 minutes of just gross
doom.
Ugh. But I kind of like how that song sets it up. Like I was looking at that, like, is this going to be like a little segue track? And no, it's actually musical. Same thing with the closing track, the OCP Skunk Ape. I think that's how you say that. I know Skunk Ape is like a legend in the South. He's like the Southern Bigfoot. Like he steals your pickup truck and your wife, Barb.
Sorry, Barb. It's been real.
Yeah. I mean, she might have upgraded. Who knows? But while it sounds like it's going to be like just a weird outro, it does come in with some like last final gasps of brutality.
Actually, I think the last 30 seconds of that song are everything that's in this record all at once. Like every single thing that this record had to offer from start to finish is in the last 30 seconds, just to remind you of what you just went through.
Yeah. Except for maybe Sacral Brain, which really stands out as like this just massive track of, like, it's mostly like slower, doomier. It's got some great harmonies on it, like legit catchy.
It's actually one of my favorite songs. Again, a lot of autopsy doom moments, even some incantation doom moments, and while it does, you know, volley back and forth between two-step and whatnot, dude, it's got a cool bass solo in it.
Yeah.
Like, first of all, not only is this bass snarling, but the actual bass work in this album is grossly entertaining.
It still packs all the weird transitions, except you get like longer sections where they actually kind of hang on to those riffs for a little bit longer. And there's a interesting little pause with a sample and like a load of feedback, and then it kind of gets back into that kind of grindy two-step and kind of closes this song out with just like some absolute ferocity. Honestly, as like far as negatives on here, it's really hard to say if there was like something on here that just completely put me off, because I think that is the intention. Like, I was thinking about this as we were reviewing this, whereas Vitriol, band we just recently went over, they want you to experience all the rage and the torment that they want to capture in the music, and they 100% did. This band, I think, just wants to mess with you. Like, it's strange. Like, you can actually hear some of their influences, but they still make it their own. Like, yeah, I could say this sounds like Autopsy, maybe even early Psy at times, but it never fully sounds like it. Like, I could say it sounds like both of those bands, but also with like possibly a lethal dose of mescaline mixed in there.
Yeah.
So yeah, like in terms of anything like off-putting on here, like, yeah, it can be a little hard to follow, and sometimes the atmosphere is a little too immersive. Like, I was kind of getting flashbacks of like times I watched Faces of Death as a teenager. But it all works with this album, because this album is just strange and strangely catchy too. So yeah, I don't really have any like big negatives on here.
I don't really either, to be honest. There were times when I thought that snarling bass kind of overtook everything. But then again, if you go back and listen to this record as a whole and you think about what's happening to you, like, who cares? Who cares that it's overpowering it? I think the point is that this record doesn't make any sense and it's supposed to be a mindfuck. So, by those standards, why not? You can put whatever you want on here at this point. It's executed well, so who cares?
Yeah, I mean, either this band is trying to pry open my third eye, or it's trying to send messages to my reptilian brain. Not sure, but my brain feels all tingly after listening to this.
We'll find out when we go to sleep tonight what really happened.
Yeah, like, this is a metal album that only Hunter S. Thompson would fully understand, I think.
Fair.
Yeah. But honestly, I dig it. And I'm going to go ahead and give this 4 stars. Like, this was an absolutely bonkers album to listen to. And I plan on listening to it more just to see if I can pick out any more weird intricacies. Despite it being strange as hell, it's very weirdly technical. Yeah. And, like, they know how to write some killer, savage riffs and mix it in that strange atmosphere. The vocals kind of hang out in this, like, background gurgle. It adds to the just nuts atmosphere on here. I think this album just shoots for being unpredictable, but also still well written, because like there's a lot of stuff on here where, you know, you got to be a solid musician to really pull off.
Yeah.
And I think they did. I think I might like their earlier stuff a little bit more, but I think this album's going to take a little bit more time for me to settle in on. If you're looking for just a flat-out weird death metal album, this is 100% it. I don't know if I will hear a death metal album this weird this year.
Yeah, I don't...
Maybe. I'm not going to rule it out.
Right?
But this is exceptionally strange. Yeah, like I said, early Psy, like the demo era, back when they were kind of worshiping Autopsy, which is also kind of close to this. Yeah, outside of that, maybe Mr. Bungle? I don't know. Find a weird band, throw it in your favorite death metal band. It might sound like this, it might not.
Play it backwards.
Yeah, it will probably make the same amount of sense. I don't know, but I know that this is pretty awesome, and as far as like a unique death metal experience, no, I think it's this.
I'm also at a 4. This was grossly entertaining. From song to song, from moment to moment, from transition to transition, you have no idea what's going to happen to you. You ever see the old "This is your brain on drugs" commercials? Like, this is that. This is your brain frying. Dipygus is drugs. That's it.
T-shirt idea, guys.
Yeah, right, exactly. I would equate this to having a bad trip.
Yo.
Just straight up. Because just every moment, it's just up and down, and all the riffs are contorted, and the transitions are insane. To stop on a dime and go from some groovy two-step to doom and then immediately back into blast beats without stopping to take a breath is crazy. The guitar work is actually really cool. The riffs are really entertaining, and they're all down-tuned, and I love that anyway. The harmonies and the melodies, there aren't too many hooks, but they're always like crazy. They always take this crazy like descending melody and then harmonize it. And then you're like, what the fuck? But yeah, the whole record is just entertaining. And even the spoken word sections are gross, and the atmosphere is slimy, and it's a lot to unpack, but it's very entertaining. As far as bands are concerned that this sounds like, it sounds like a lot of bands, but done in a really weird way. Yeah, definitely Mr. Bungle, Voivod. As far as melodies and harmonies are concerned, Spirit Adrift, Cerebral Rot, Autopsy, like there's a whole bunch in here, but it is not without keeping you engaged and making you wonder what is happening. So, 4 stars.
Yeah, between this and Vitriol, man, yeah, I kind of want to, like, you know, give both of those bands a wellness check, because I don't know what's going on over in their camps, but I don't know. There's a lot of weird stuff. Anyway, if you enjoyed this review, give it a thumbs up, and if you are new to the channel, subscribe, because we do stuff like this all the time. We are also on Patreon. If you'd like to help us out there, there's a link down below at thrallsmetal.com. Our Patreon link is there. It is also on our channel, up on the banner in the bottom right-hand corner, I believe. But if you're looking for Thralls Metal stuff, you have to go to thrallsmetal.com. We have new shirts. We have old shirts that are at a discounted price if we have your size. And we also have hats. So if you're looking for any of that stuff, click the link down below.
And as always, tons of stuff going on at Thralls of Metal. Tons more reviews coming your way. We got discography rankings coming, Black Dahlia Murder, and then the Almighty Meshuggah. Both of those are going to suck to rank. I'm not looking forward to ranking either one. What's John Jamming is returning. Nick has collection updates up the wazoo, because if you don't know, this guy collects CDs. Always a bunch happening in the Thralls of Metal camp, but we do it for you guys. We appreciate you guys immensely for continuing to tune in and allow us into your living rooms or dining rooms or cell phones or cars or wherever you choose to watch us. We appreciate you letting us hang out with you. It's kind of strange that you want to hang out with us, because, you know,
I don't want to hang out with us.
I don't want to be here. But anyway, yeah, we appreciate you. Thank you so much for all that you guys do. We couldn't do this without you.
Yeah, you guys are absolutely awesome, and yeah, tons of stuff coming your way. So one more big thank you, because you guys are absolutely kick-ass.
Thank you.
And we will catch you later.